A lion mauled her at 9. At 12, she played a child prostitute. At 13, she walked off a film set because producers demanded scenes she refused to do. And at 18, a man shot the President of the United States and said he did it for her. Her name is Jodie Foster, and her story is not about one bad decision or one dangerous man. It is about an entire system that took a 3-year-old girl, turned her into the family paycheck, and spent the next 15 years placing her in situations no child should ever be in. It starts in 1962, Los Angeles. Jodie is born, Alicia Christian Foster, the youngest of 4 children. Her father, Lucius Fisher Foster III, left before she was born. He walked out while her mother was still pregnant. Jodie never met him, never had a relationship with him, never had a father in the house. Her mother, Evelyn, went by Brandy. She had been a big band singer and worked as a publicist in Hollywood, handling names like Grace Kelly and Gregory Peck, but that career was over. Now she was a single mother of 4 with no income and no plan. So she turned to the only asset she had, her children. Brandy started managing her son, Buddy, first. He got a recurring role on a television show. Then at a casting call for Buddy, 3-year-old Jodie caught the eye of a casting agent. Within weeks, she was in a copper-toned sunscreen commercial. From that moment on, the family had a new breadwinner. She was 3 years old. Jodie said it herself decades later in a 2024 interview. "I was it. There was no other income besides me." A preschooler carrying the financial weight of a family of 5, Brandy booked her into everything. Over 50 television appearances before she turned 10. Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Kung Fu, The Doris Day Show. Jodie was not a child who happened to act. She was a child who had to act because the rent depended on it. And then Disney came calling. In 1972, 9-year-old Jodie was cast in Napoleon and Samantha, an adventure film involving 2 children and a lion. It should have been a simple family movie. It almost killed her. On set, there were multiple lions. The main one, Zamba, was old and gentle. But the production also used stand-ins, including a lion named Simba. Local teenagers had been sneaking onto the set at night, shooting BB guns at the animals through the fencing. The lions were agitated, stressed, and nobody told a 9-year-old girl. During filming, Simba grabbed Jodie. Not a bump, not a scratch. The lion picked her up in its jaws, shook her sideways like a rag doll, and dropped her. Jodie later described having 2 perfect puncture wounds on one side of her hip and 2 on the other. She still has the scars. And what did the crew do? They ran. She described watching the entire crew sprint away from her while she stood there in shock. A 9-year-old child, alone, bleeding, with a lion standing over her. The trainer gave a command. The lion opened its mouth. Jodie dropped to the ground. This is the part that tells you everything about how Hollywood treated child actors in the 1970s. They sent her back to work. Same set, same lions. She was 9. But the lion was not the most dangerous thing Hollywood would put in her path. That was coming 4 years later. In 1976, Jodie Foster was 13 years old. And in that single year, she appeared in 3 films that would have been controversial for an adult actress, let alone a child. The first was Taxi Driver. Martin Scorsese cast her as Iris, a 12-year-old girl trapped in the world of street exploitation in New York City. The role required her to portray a reality so dark that the California Labor Board tried to block her from doing it. The Board of Education had questions. Her lawyer stepped in, and ultimately, a UCLA psychiatrist was brought in to evaluate whether a 12-year-old could handle this material. The evaluation, by Jodie's own account, was absurd. She described it in a 2026 NPR interview. The psychiatrist asked her what food she liked. She said Chinese. He asked what movies she liked. She told him. And based on that, they concluded she was a normal person who understood the difference between acting and real life. She was cleared to play a child prostitute. She was 12. On set, Scorsese did not know how to direct her in the more difficult scenes. He could not bring himself to give her instructions directly, so he used Robert De Niro as a go-between. A 12-year-old girl was performing some of the most harrowing material in American cinema. receiving her directions secondhand through an adult actor because the director himself was uncomfortable. Jodie's older sister Connie was brought in as a stand-in for the most suggestive scenes. A social worker was present on set. These precautions existed because every adult in that room knew the material was dangerous for a child, and they filmed it anyway. Taxi Driver won the Palme d'Or at Cannes. Jodie earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress. She was 14 when she was nominated. Critics praised the film as a masterpiece, and a man named John Hinckley Jr. watched it over and over and over again. But we will get to him. Because 1976 was not done with Jodie Foster yet. That same year, she appeared in The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane, a thriller where she played a 13-year-old living alone, opposite Martin Sheen as a predatory adult who terrorizes her. The film required a scene that the producers insisted on. Jodie refused. She was 13 years old and she walked off the set. She said no. A child told a room full of adult men that she would not do what they were asking. The producers did not accept her refusal. The scene had to stay in the film. So Brandy, Jodie's mother, offered a solution. She suggested that Jodie's 21-year-old sister Connie serve as a body double. The scene was filmed. The character on screen is still 13. The audience sees a 13-year-old's story. But the body belongs to a 21-year-old woman. The director later claimed Jodie only regretted the scene after it was filmed and asked for it to be removed. The producers refused that too. A 13-year-old girl said no twice and was overruled both times. And then there was Bugsy Malone, also released in 1976, a gangster parody where every role was played by a child. Jodie played a nightclub performer in a role designed for an adult actress. Roger Ebert wrote at the time that at 13 she was already getting the roles that grown-up actresses complained were not being written for women anymore. That was meant as a compliment. 3 films in 1 year, all with adult themes. She was 13, and her mother approved every single one. Now, John Hinckley Jr. Hinckley was born in 1955. He dropped out of Texas Tech University and drifted through the country, struggling with mental illness, taking antidepressants and sedatives. And then he saw Taxi Driver, not once, dozens of times. He became fixated on the film, on the character of Iris, on the 12-year-old girl played by Jodie Foster. He began dressing like Robert De Niro's character, Travis Bickle. He bought a revolver in 1979. In 1980, he read in People magazine that Jodie Foster had enrolled at Yale University. He lied to his parents, told them he was attending a writing course at Yale, took their money, and moved to New Haven, Connecticut. On September 17th, he called her dormitory. They spoke briefly. Over the next 4 days, he kept calling. She stopped answering. He slid love letters and poems under her door. She gave the letters to a Yale dean. The dean gave them to campus police. They could not find him. Hinckley then turned his attention to President Jimmy Carter. He stalked Carter at a campaign event, getting within a foot of the president. He was arrested at Nashville Airport for illegal firearm possession. The FBI did not connect the arrest to the president. The Secret Service was never notified. His parents put him in brief psychiatric care. It did not work. On the morning of March 30th, 1981, John Hinckley sat in a Washington hotel room and wrote a letter to Jodie Foster. He wrote that he had left her dozens of poems and messages, that he could not wait any longer to impress her, and that what he was about to do, he was doing for her. At 2:27 in the afternoon, he shot President Ronald Reagan outside the Washington Hilton Hotel. The bullet ricocheted off the limousine, broke a rib, punctured a lung, and caused severe internal bleeding. 3 other people were wounded, including Press Secretary James Brady, who was permanently disabled. Jodie Foster was 18 years old. She was running across the Yale campus with a friend when she heard the news. She had no idea the shooter was the man who had been calling her dorm. When his motivation was made public, her world collapsed. She wrote about it in a 1982 Esquire essay called "Why Me?" The details she described are chilling. The press, she wrote, swarmed through the campus like a cavalry invasion. She received death threats. She broke her collarbone running from a photographer. She was taken to a safe house by the Secret Service. She needed bodyguards everywhere she went. She had to take a semester off from Yale, and it did not stop there. A second man, Edward Michael Richardson, 22 years old, also became obsessed with Jodie Foster. He traveled to Yale carrying a loaded handgun with the intention of killing her. He changed his mind only after watching her perform in a college play. The two stalkers later corresponded from their respective psychiatric hospitals. Hinckley wrote to Richardson, and the letter contained a line so disturbing it barely seems real. He wrote that Jodie was pretty lucky to be alive, and that he wished Richardson had gotten her when he had the chance. At trial, Hinckley demanded Jodie testify. She agreed to do so in a closed session. Only she, the judge, the lawyers, and Hinckley were in the room. She refused to look at him. She refused to acknowledge his presence. During her testimony, he threw a pen at her and screamed threats until U.S. Marshals dragged him out of the room. The verdict was not guilty by reason of insanity. Jodie called it horrifying. Then the National Enquirer published a poem Hinckley had written from his hospital bed, containing graphic threats against her life. Her lawyers had to intervene. She was 19 years old, and a man who had shot the President of the United States was writing poetry about killing her from a psychiatric ward, and a national magazine thought it was entertainment. Jodie Foster went back to Yale. She graduated. She built a career on her own terms, won 2 Academy Awards, became a director. She survived in ways that most people placed in her position never do. But she carried it. All of it. The weight of being a breadwinner at 3, the scars from a lion at 9, the roles that no child should play at 12 and 13, the stalker at 17, the assassination attempt at 18, the second stalker, the trial, the threats, the poems. In a 1999 interview, she said she never wanted to be the actress who was remembered for that event, that it had nothing to do with her, that she was a hapless bystander. But she was not a bystander. She was the reason it happened. Not because she did anything wrong, because adults put a 12-year-old girl in a role that created an image so powerful, a disturbed man built his entire identity around it. And when that identity collapsed into violence, the same system that created the image pointed at the girl and asked her to explain it. John Hinckley Jr. was released from psychiatric care in 2016. His restrictions were fully lifted in 2022. He now posts music on YouTube under his own name. He is free, and Jodie Foster still has the scars.